So the introduction to my book is called A Story About Dialogue, Potential and Integration of Complexity. And it begins basically with this history of how the book came out. It began by one single article of some 10-20 pages. Eventually it became a 11-part series of articles, 11-part series of articles, and eventually it became the book that we are presenting now, Inherent or Inherited Bhakti in the Jiva, according to Gaudiya Vedanta, which will have almost like 500 pages. So it was interesting because in the beginning I thought I may find some obscure quotes here and there regarding the topic in making the case of Gaudiya Siddhanta regarding this particular point, but eventually I found an astonishing, overwhelming list of thousands, basically I will say literally thousands of scriptural evidence in favor of this particular topic regarding Bhakti in the Jiva. So the format of the book, which is something that I also describe in my introduction, is divided in two parts. First part regarding classical viewpoints, which will address how our Gaudiya Acharyas, our Pramana, Srimad Bhagavatam and classical texts have addressed this particular topic, and then contemporary viewpoints will be the second part of the book, which will address certain statements which at least overtly seem to contradict some of the words coming from the classical viewpoint. So I will try to address them and harmonize them and explain how to understand these two things in harmony with each other. The purpose of the book, which is also addressed in the introduction, has to do with the principle of Sambandha. Why we should care for such a topic, why such a book may be important for the Gaudiya community, and mostly I will reply in terms of Sambandha, or conceptual orientation, that will give a foundation to our practice. So the more our Sambandha is clear and fixed, that will facilitate our avideya of our practice, and eventually that will invoke a particular prayojan or fruit. So even though it may seem obscure or indirect, proper foundational Sambandha Tattva Siddhanta will really affect for better, for good, our devotional practice. And also another purpose that I try to briefly address in my introduction, and which is mostly the main point of my introduction, is the importance of promoting conversation among the members of the Gaudiya community, amongst ourselves. The Gaudiya community needs to speak with itself, if you will, needs to go to recalibrate and reorientate and speak about so many things that still are lingering there and needs to be harmonized and need to be resolved. And in this way we will be able to transcend certain like tribal thinking or cognitive rigidity that sometimes may affect some of the members of the community, like any other community for sure. And all that hopefully in the spirit of Vada, which is one of the types of conversation described in the Veda, Vada Jalpa Vitanda, Vada being the ideal Shastric conversation, where the two parts are really interested in truth, interested in ascertaining ultimate conclusions in a humble, open spirit, and so on. That's the attempt in the book. And in the context of that, I try to develop the notion of integration of complexity, of those unresolved issues that still remain there, and we need to make them part of a higher equation, if you will, if we want to enter into higher domains. And for that we need to venture ourselves into the realm of paradox and dealing with grace between black and white. And also I invoke an interesting term coming from another author in the West called first and second naivete, these two terms. And I try to make a parallel with our situation as Kanishtas and Uttams, and in between the necessity for stepping as Madhyams, if we want to go from Kanishta Adhikari to Uttama Adhikari. No? So naivete means like to be innocent, and the Kanishta has that spirit, the Uttam has that spirit in its own way, but for walking through Kanishta to Uttam, we need to deal with the complexity of life, deal with the complexity of Shastric statements, deal with the complexity of Siddhanta, and reach ultimately the converging point of Krishna Lila, where everything is fully innocent, fully informal, fully aprakrita, fully naive in a transcendental way. But for entering into such a realm of bhava, of prem, of rasa, first we need to go through the layers of tattva and siddhanta and ideally solve or whatever challenges they may present to us in order to keep advancing. So personally I consider this topic, Bhakti in the Jiva, very crucial topic to solve, to deal with in this regard. So mostly those are some of the main topics I'm dealing in the introduction to my forthcoming book, Inherent or Inherited Bhakti in the Jiva according to Gaudiya Vedanta.